Good Saturday morning, good Christmas Eve day. Today's devotion comes from N.T. Wright. And if you've done anything, read anything, listened to N.T. Wright, you know he's got a challenge for us. This Christmas season isn't just about remembrance. It's about renewing what we do. The devotion is entitled, How the Christmas Stories Call the Church to a Different Vision. Again, it's by N.T. Wright, and this actually was written a year ago. 2 weeks ago, I visited our old family church in the far north of England. I was placing flowers by my parents' gravestone in front of the memorials to my grandparents, great-grandparents, and sundry uncles and aunts. But my eye was drawn, as it has often been, to the Jesse window in the east end of the 12th century church. Jesse windows, a traditional medieval design in stained glass, display Jesus' ancestry in the form of a spreading tree. The genealogy goes back 1,000 years to King David and then to David's own father, Jesse of Bethlehem. This way of telling Jesus' story picks up a prophetic text often read at Christmas time. Isaiah chapter 11 speaks of the coming king as a shoot from the stump of Jesse and a branch which grows out of his roots. The passage promises that the root of Jesse will be a sign of peace and hope for all the nations, filling the whole earth with knowledge of the Lord. Earlier, the prophet described this coming king as the Prince of Peace, chapter 9, verse 6. That famous phrase crops up, perhaps wistfully, in many Christmas carols, along with the mention of Jesse himself. A recent popular carol speaks of a spotless rose, which comes from the tender root of Jesse. Flowery language rooted in Scripture for a horticulture theme. Isaiah's original oracles of peace burst in upon a world of warring nations. The prophet saw them as vivid symbols, as animals who would finally live in peace together in a renewed creation. The wolf shall live with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. Isaiah 11:6. That little child links back again to the infant Jesus. The picture of animals living in peace under his guidance translates easily into the nativity scene. Jesus in a manger, Mary and Joseph looking on with ox, ass, lambs, and even camels all clustering around. Killjoy rationalists might object that the stories of Jesus' birth don't mention these animals, or that you might actually find a manger in a family living quarters, but that's not the point. The nativity scene re-expresses Isaiah's vision in its own symbolic way. The Prince of Peace, the shoot of Jesse's stump, will bring all creation into a much-needed new harmony. Jesse doesn't appear much in the New Testament, but when he does, it's explosive. St. Paul, like Isaiah, believed in creation's coming peaceful renewal. But we often forget how he sees that hope being fleshed out. Jesus' followers, Paul believed, were supposed to be the working model for creation's hope. At the climax of his letter to Rome, he urges believers from different ethnic and cultural backgrounds to come together in worship. They are to welcome one another across traditional differences, learning to worship the one God, the Father of Jesus the Messiah, with one mind and one mouth. Romans 15:6. Paul backs up his urgent and eloquent appeal with a string of biblical quotations, saving for the last the telling line from Isaiah 11:10, "The root of Jesse rises to rule the nations, and in him the nations will hope." Paul is here looking through the biblical equivalent of a Jesse window, glimpsing an entire train of thought, in this case, the prophecy of Isaiah 11, in a single line. In his mind, the different ethnic and cultural groups have come to believe in Jesus are like the different animals that, in the prophet's vision, will now feed peacefully together with the little child at their head, ruling through self-giving love. Under his leadership, traditional opponents and those nursing mutual suspicions must find reconciliation. In particular, the long-promised coming together of Jews and Gentiles into a single, renewed family is to be a sign of hope to the world. The nativity scene, so easy to dismiss as Christian kitsch, still carries symbolic power. But here's the problem. The Bible translators of the 16th century were determined that ordinary people should worship and read Scripture in their own language. Isaiah's vision and Paul's theology ought to be within the reach of all. Fine. But in the excitement of using one's own language, it was easy to ignore the biblical imperative to unity. Why make things complicated by getting together with other language groups? Ethnic differences have thus quietly pulled us apart, often picking up theological freight along the way. The big debates of the 16th and subsequent centuries were in any case about how to get to heaven, but it was never the biblical hope. The Jesse hope was never about humans going to heaven. It was always about heaven coming to earth, fulfilling Isaiah's promise in chapter 11, verse 9, that the earth would be full of knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Things got worse. Having accepted national and language-based fellowships, the Western churches were unprepared for the secular sociology, which suggested that different ethnic groups were effectively different species. We know where that has led. Paul would have been horrified. What about the wolf and the lamb? The book of Revelation 7:9 sees a great crowd, too big to count, of every nation, tribe, people, and language, all worshiping together. That's how the church is supposed to be living already, as indicated in the text we read at Christmas. Without that, why should anyone believe in the God who holds out hope for the whole creation? Never in my lifetime have we needed that hope as urgently as we do today. The pandemic is still rampant. The global climate is throwing floods, fires, and tornadoes at us. Powerful nations rattle their missiles at one another, while babies starve and refugees drown. The Christmas stories themselves call us to a different vision. Matthew's gospel is the most obviously Jewish, but that's where we find the story of the obviously non-Jewish wise men coming to worship Jesus. Luke's gospel is the most obviously Gentile in orientation, but that's where we find the obviously Jewish shepherds coming to find the newborn child. Like the animals around the crib, the Christmas scenario opens up to include the world. Shame on us if we shrink that vision to fit our prejudices. Jesus' followers are called to model God's hope for the world. This time last year, Isaiah 11 acquired a new meaning within our family. Our youngest grandchild arrived just before Christmas. To our surprise and delight, his parents named him Jesse. N.T. Wright says, Merry Christmas. This evening, the Community Church of Loyalton will have its candlelight service. We'd love to see you there. I think it starts at 6. And tomorrow morning we will have church service, 10:30, 601 Lewis Street. Brad will be preaching. You want to be there. Merry Christmas from the church. Merry Christmas from the Loveridge household. May you fulfill Christ's vision for you. Merry Christmas.